Welcome back to Horrifically Well Read, Bled, and Said. We are honored and excited to be talking today to Sadie Hartmann, who so many people know and love as Mother Horror on all of the social medias, especially Instagram and TikTok. But it is absolutely our honor to talk to you today, Sadie. Welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on the show. I'm so glad that you guys are doing this podcast. You seem to really love it. And I can't think of a better, like, way to platform horror authors than to have conversations with you two. I'm really excited you guys are doing this.
Thank you.
That was the nicest thing.
So
Thank you.
kind. We will send you our Venmo. um, no, it's just you do such fantastic work for the community and just highlighting so many authors and just like thematically the things that you put together are
Mhm.
so helpful. So, for us in the show, it's like we want it to feel like it's a really casual, feel good conversation around horror, but that it feels like friends that are talking, but also to bring up voices that don't get as much exposure, such as women and people of color and queer voices. And we do have selective men that one that we really appreciate and love. But
They really got to prove themselves to get on here, though. I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
it's Jonathan Jan.
Brian McCauley. That's a few other. Yep.
And
Yeah.
Aw.
So while our bank account does not appreciate
right.
sometimes all your wonderful lists, we always do. So I'm sure you
Yeah.
hear that a lot.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the comment I get the most on my posts is people like fake yelling at me telling me that they can't afford these posts.
Yeah, no, I feel like I commented last night on your post saying that the problem is I'm getting so just straight up grouchy pissy at bookstores because
They don't have it.
they don't have the things that I want. And they're like, "Well, we can order it for you." And I'm like, I can myself.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's
It's like I want to see them. I want to touch them. I mean,
yeah, I mean, that's the whole point is when you go into the store is to have the item and the Instagram and you feel like so it's crazy because we went to three different stores this weekend and some big, like, box and then independent. And I'm like,
looking for a book that Sadie recommended, right?
yeah, the witches of El Paso.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
and I'm just like, okay, I know I saw it at the one and just mind you, like I drove 30 miles away to like,
Wow.
yeah, so anyway, and then they were like, well, you can go to the other store like
Yeah.
another 30 miles away. And I was like, not today. I'm like, but those Play Nice came out, like you had to go and tell them to get it out.
Yeah. So it's not just like, it's not obscure titles that we're talking about,
Yeah.
for a
Yeah,
lot of
I
things.
well, I do have a few recommendations, and this is obviously things that you guys probably already know, but maybe for your listeners too, I do have some pro hacks, like one of which is I have two platforms that I frequent quite often, one of which is Hoopla from the library.
Mhm.
Not all libraries, especially rural libraries that depend on federal funding, but bigger libraries and, some small libraries that can afford it offer Hoopla to library and patrons to access at least 5, maybe sometimes even several movies and books and music and audiobooks free through that app. And there's no wait time. So whatever is on Hoopla is available immediately. So I pretty much queue up everything that I want for the month. And then I make sure to check all of them out. Like if I have 5, I used to have 10 through Hoopla, but they changed it to 5. And so I just use all 5. And if I haven't used them by the end of the month, I grab them right at the end. And then I have like basically 10 for the next month because they roll over.
That's smart.
Yeah. And there's everything on there. There's so much gothic on there. I've been really scrolling that. So I might do a post about what's available to me, although it makes people feel sad that don't have Hoopla. So the other app is Libby, obviously, through your library. So you could get audiobooks and ebooks through there. And then you can always order books through your library. My library pretty much orders anything I ask them to, and it usually just takes a couple weeks for that. to like transpire, and then they send me a notification letting me know they added it to their library. And then another pro hack is to call your indie bookstore like ahead of time before. I guess it's basically like a pre-order if you want to get a brand new title, but you can pre-order through your indie bookstore, and that's really great for them and it's great for you. Then they'll call you when that comes in, and then you can use bookshop.org. Um,
Yes.
I have a store on there with all the titles that I recommend, and I can give you guys the link for later.
Yeah, we'll put that on the notes for the
Yeah. So I already have like a store with all these 2026 titles. I have all the 2025 titles on there, and it's great because it benefits your independent stores. Plus, you get to buy your books. And then
Mhm.
also Libro FM is
Yep.
basically the audiobook version of bookshop.org. It's so great. Like between all of those and my review, Edelweiss and NetGalley, like that's why I recommend so many books because
Yeah.
I have so many books.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask is, I feel like I'm constantly reading and finding new books and buying, and every time I see one of your lists, I'm like, I haven't seen so many of these. Like, how much time do you spend researching? And is it, do you get sent a lot of things now? Like, where are you finding so many
Okay.
wonderful titles that you recommend?
Well, yes, research is my other hobby. So book reading and book buying are two different hobbies. And then my third favorite hobby is book research, which I do while my husband's watching baseball. So we're like
That's a lot of
together.
time there.
We're together in the same room and I'm listening to the game, but I'm really just trolling various different places.
Love that.
One of which is Blackwell's, is a huge kind of like a Barnes and Noble, but it's in the UK. And that's where I find all of my UK book recommendations. So, things like Laura Purcell's new book, The House of Splinters, doesn't come out until February for us, but it comes out in October for them. So it's been on my radar for a really long time.
Yeah, that's the
And
same for Gemma's new book too, right? It comes out in October.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, exactly. They used to, I don't know if they still do with the tariffs, but they used to do free shipping to the US. I haven't made a purchase since that whole thing
yeah.
started coming down, so I don't know. But I also obviously like track every single publisher with a spreadsheet, and I just go and check them on Instagram and check their catalogs on the website.
That's
It's
amazing.
it's
Thank
pretty
you.
crazy.
You're doing the horror lovers work here. Like, we appreciate it so much.
So when I got together, he said he liked making lists. And I was like, for what purpose? And he's like, for fun. I'm like, and then what? I just like writing things down. I'm like, he's like, it's me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but don't you already know what you like? He's like, yeah, but I like look.
Hey, Sadie's winning Stoker Awards for lists now.
Yes, I love making lists. It's
Extra
so much
person,
fun.
Adam.
Yes.
Someone that like aligns with, your heart like that. And I know there's a lot of people out there that love to make lists. Like I wish that I did because it makes me feel very left out. But even so, like, you'd be like, I'm like, oh, what are you doing? And you're like, I'm gonna rearrange my DVDs.
Shelves by,
I think I'm gonna do it by color. Today I'm doing it by publication.
uh-huh.
I'm just like, okay. It just makes you feel really good.
I don't know. It's like every now and again, I'm just like, I can't find anything. I need a new
Yes.
order for everything.
Yes, there's nothing more frustrating than wanting to take like a photo and you're looking for a specific book and you can't find it.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So you are aligned. This speaks to, and Adam, you're very much like, I always think a lot about like the whole disc personality, like
Mm.
DIS. Someone that you will never make a statement
Nope.
unless you know it's like
Mm-mm.
100% correct.
It's like one of my biggest fears is like posting something and being wrong about like the title or something that happened. Like, I just can't do it. It's painful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I say, we were talking to Robert Patone at Fantastic,
Yeah.
and he said that you should have Adam on walkie talkies because they were talking about movies in 1995, and he's just like on his show. And I mean, I'm just like rattling them off, and I was like, Robert, like, he can tell you how much it grows domestically and foreign. Like it's just all in his head. And
I was real popular in school, you know.
yeah,
That's
no,
awesome.
it's like that with comic books.
Movies, yeah, horror
And
movies
like
especially.
and nobody wants to play him
And you know,
because he can just play on the back.
The trivia, yeah.
yes, I'm sure
That Mind the Gap, that is such a fun board game if no one's ever played it, but it's
it's like boomer. It goes through all the generations of questions. It's like listed that way:
there's
boomer,
someone that's like
millennial, Gen Z. Yeah,
not in that generation. Shit.
yeah,
Someone that's one not Adam. He's like, I got this.
That's
yeah,
awesome. That's a good skill to have.
yeah.
A lot
Well,
of that comes from reading.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Reading and I love old movies and new, like
yes,
all,
me
all.
too.
So, but let's go back to the beginning here. Before you were mother horror, were you, were you elementary school horror and high school horror? Like, was it? Did it just follow you the whole way, or is this like a more newer thing for you? How long has horror been a part of your life?
Yeah. I'm older. I'm almost 50. I'll be 50 next year. So I missed the whole Goosebumps
Yes.
and like R.L. Stein. Like that, those things were I meant Christopher Pike. Yeah, so Goosebumps and
Mm.
Christopher Pike were like not on my radar as a
Right.
child. So there were some spooky books for kids. I would definitely give credit to John Belair's was my early start with the grim and the macabre. It's he had two characters. One was Lewis Dixon and John Dixon and Louis Barnevelt were two young boys who have their own independent series that he wrote, where one is like living with a kooky uncle who is like a warlock, and those movies are like I think they've made a movie, The House with the Clock in Its Walls.
Okay. Yeah. The Jack
Yeah, so
Black.
they made a movie out of that, but there's my favorite was The Mummy, the Will, and the Crypt, and he just basically goes on these like spooky mystery adventures. And that's where I would say that I got started really gravitating toward things that were, eerie. And I read a lot of my mom's Agatha Christie books. I liked, the mysteries, the more gruesome, the better. And then she basically just told me like I could have free access to her bookshelves, which meant her Anne Rice, her Peter Straub, her Stephen King. And so I did. At 13, I read Salem's Lot, and
Yes.
while I was terrified and just, stayed up too late and was afraid to go to sleep, I had to have more. So I'd say it started at 13 and then just progressively got more and more intense. But when I started a Bookstagram, my username was Sadie Reads Them All,
Mm,
which was kind of like saying, hey, like I read fantasy because I was a big fantasy girly for a long time. I read fantasy, I read horror, I read mysteries. I pretty much would just take photos of a lot of different things, reading really widely. And then it just got kind of narrower and narrower as that progressed because I was leading movements like Season of Horror, where we would read spooky stuff from like September through October, and then that just never ended. And Ashley, before we became business partners, she named me Mother Horror. Like that was all her.
love that.
Yeah.
And do you think that, is that like a part of you, like this persona kind of thing of like what you post there? Or do you feel like that's now is what you mainly read? Or do you feel like you still like yourself, you still read all of these different things? And I feel like even in your recommendations, it kind of flirts with a lot of different
Yeah.
genres within that. But do you think because, you are such a presence, does that sort of dominate a lot of your reading now, as well as, being mother?
I think I can get all of the things that I want. Like I still really love romance and fantasy.
Hmm.
I love mysteries and thrillers, and I get it all through horror. I feel like there's a lot of genre blending, so I definitely gravitate toward the horror mostly and then horror adjacent too. And people really follow me there. Like,
Yeah.
I don't feel like people get frustrated that I'm in my gothic era right now. I just
Mhm.
finished my last traditional horror book for the season. I'm not going to read any more trad horror for the rest of the year. I'm definitely just going to be focusing on everything that is, witchy and gothic and really seasonal. I read a lot of Christmas horror as like starting in November. I'll go full on into that. And people embrace it. Like, I don't think anyone falls off the, you know, train just because I'm not focusing on the stuff that I was reading for 6 months, in the beginning
Yeah.
of the year. So the gothic thing really started about 2 years ago too. Like, I never really recognized it as true horror. I'll be honest with you. I always thought like that's its own subgenre
Hmm.
because it had so many like romantic elements and because I felt like it didn't really go hard. Like I was like, it's not scary. It's just kind of
Yeah.
like spooky vibes. But
Right.
then I read The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell and I was terrified,
Yeah.
and I thought this does go hard. Like gothic does get spooky and I love, highlighting the gothics now. So I've
Yeah.
dedicated like 6 months to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love reading the Gothic, and I think that's what I was gonna say is, like, I started like, as I started really like, my original goal with seeing how much I could read and setting, like, the goal for myself, I was like, "I wanna read everything to really see what I like, and I wanna try all genres," and it was really easy for me to, like, weed out some of these that I immediately was like, "That's not for me," after, like, trying 2 books or so of it. But I started finding that, like, everything I loved was horrific.
Yeah.
And originally, the podcast name here was going to be "Hold Up in My Horror Reader," but speaking about how certain genres go really hard, and I was like, "No, you're reading horror." And I was like, "No, I'm not." And he's like, "Yes, you are. Everything you're reading, everything you love is horrific." And I was like, "No shit." So I love that's one of my favorite things about what you do is the curation. Like I love to swipe through and just like look at how you've categorized some of these things because being that I do love to read so diversely, and I love, nonfiction. I mean, so many horrific things, but it reads like fiction, if you have it written well into what you're saying is like you do get a little bit of everything. And now I feel like I'm um more or less into that point where I really do enjoy like, you know, certain aspects of the subgenres of horror and some of these like things that are adjacent to it. But I find that like you can get almost everything you want out of it. But I
Yeah.
still want to continue to like push people to try to find other books that aren't traditionally labeled as horror, but they're just as devastating or creepy
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatever. And it's just like I still haven't figured out the rhyme and the reason for how things are labeled yet.
Yeah.
As I makes me sad that people are like missing out on things that hasn't been curated.
Right. And it is interesting to see those like throughways, that it can really easily go, from someone that reads the reformatory to go to Junie and then to go to something like Jesmond Ward's Let Us Descend, where it's like
Yeah.
they're not necessarily all labeled horror. You might not find like the reformatory is more traditionally, even though it's not like it goes through a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
Because it has ghosts in it. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So, but it is really, yeah, that's true. So, but it is interesting the way that, and I think that horror, like you said, you don't see like when it's a comedy, it's a comedy. When it's a drama, it's a drama. Whereas horror can be a horror drama. It can be a horror comedy. It can be all of those things and still be horror. And I think that's why it's so versatile. And I think that, the thing that kind of ties everything together is like horror is so honest and truthful about what's happening in the
Yeah.
world or, yeah.
it's like the most authentic, not like washed like
Hmm.
subject material be considered horror.
Yeah.
If you really want to take a look at something and not get like the
Sugar coated. Yeah.
yes. Also, Sadie, you said like people don't seem to fall off the train like when you transition. I just want to say like I personally think of you as like a miss
It's like, I don't care where it's going. That's the bus I'm on for sure.
I love that. I mean,
saying like, no, I'm transitioning
Yeah.
into spooky season. I find myself doing the same thing. I'm
Hmm.
like doing all witchy, spooky for like through October. And then there are some excellent like Christmas collections and things like that I do like to get into, but I might even have to go a little further into November for some of the spooky stuff because I just have so many out. And which is amazing to say that. Like I just love that.
thank you. Yeah, I enjoy seasonally reading and I love curating lists for people who have specific recommendations. So, like, what people don't really know is how many DMs and like comments I get from people. Mostly the DMs is it's a lot, but I take it as kind of like part of my job, like with Nightworms and the books and doing a lot of library appearances, I've welcomed people to reach out and ask me about content warnings or just recommendations or questions or like, specific requests that they have. So I'm having a lot of conversations with people in DMs, which is, where some of those curated like niche lists are born is from a conversation that I'm having with someone, privately and I'll think, "Oh, that's a really good idea." I think people, more people would want something like that. Like today I saw that it was Hobbit Day and I liked to imagine like what would hobbits read if I were to recommend horror to them, like what would I recommend to a bunch of hobbits?
Wow.
And so I had fun thinking of like kind of the softer side of horror, but also just like specifically what would appeal to them and like their context and,
Hmm.
what scares them and what,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So
A
it's
lot
a
of
lot
food
of fun.
based things. But also, like, if there's such a thing as cozy folk horror, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, basically that Briar Book of the Dead that I recommended is cozy folk horror. Like,
Yeah.
it's witchy. It has like a paranormal threat. It's about this family of witches who are protecting this village that they live in. They're having like a lot of little dynamics between each other. The youngest just is awakened to her supernatural power, which is communicating with ghosts. And so ghosts come and tell her like things that are happening in the village and she kind of has to troubleshoot that. And it's just like a really cozy kind of like I don't know, still spooky and still, like, engaging, and the audiobook was I can still remember exactly where I was walking. It was in the fall, and I was walking through my neighborhood, like, listening to that book, and it was so immersive.
Yeah.
But yeah, perfect for a Hobbit.
Yeah. I love that, thinking, and, before we get back to what you're on again, I love that your last traditional horror was The Mean Ones by Tatiana Shloty Bonet, because
Such a
we
good
just
book.
talked to her and love that book, love her. Yeah. I read the ebook, but Rebecca listened to the audio. Did you listen to the audio?
Yes, the audiobook was so good. Because there's, like, voices of the girls when they're younger in the past narrative, and then the adult narrative, and then also there's a character who I'm not gonna give any spoilers, but there's
Yeah.
a character that's in there that's kind of different, and that the narrator did such a good job voicing that. It was very spooky in my ear.
I have to listen to the ebook now, the audiobook now too, because
Yeah, it's really fun.
yeah. Um,
Do you have like multiple books and like versions going? Because I always have like two audiobooks. So like when I'm cleaning or doing laundry or
walking or whatever. Yeah.
yes, like that way I can keep doing that. But then I always have like a Kindle one and several physical. Like what's your approach?
Yes, I get up at 4 a.m. every morning. I love my morning time and I do like a little meditation. And then I go straight into an audiobook or an ebook because it's too dark really to read and it's too hard on my eyes to have like a yellow light to
Mhm.
read a physical book. So I read ebooks or audio in the morning and then I go to make my social media stuff and do business things through emails and such. And then as soon as it kind of gets lighter outside, I can read physical copies. So I usually have one physical copy going, one audio, one ebook. Um, and then, yeah, I don't really read more than 3 at a time because it just takes too long to finish a book, which that frustrates me
Yeah.
if I like spread it out too thin. So yeah, one in each format going at all times.
Although I know Lauren got you speeding up your audiobooks, so
She
I can't
did.
quite listen like she does, but like
No, I
she's
cannot.
like you. She listens on we call it the cocaine speed.
No, no, I cannot go. I cannot do 2 times speed.
I know, like, I laugh sometimes seeing her, she'll send me like a video and it'll show her audiobook at like 3.25 speed.
My,
And I'm just like, it's like, this is how you read 700 books a year.
exactly. There's just no. That sounds in my brain. That sounds really messed up. Like I went from I was doing like a 1.4, 1.5 at the highest, and then she was like, do some immersive reading where you're like reading the ebook and doing the audio at the same time. And if I do that, my eyes are faster than my ears can hear the words. And so that does help me to get it to like a 1.7. But I cannot do two unless the narrator is a slow talker, then it's fine. But like when there's people conversating and it's going, no, I cannot.
So for most times, like the minimum is always a 2.25 for me.
Yeah.
Always.
Wow, that's so
But
impressive.
but depending on, like, right now I'm reading The Blueprint and what's the other one? The Naturalist. And I can listen to both of those on like a 2.75. But if my mind wanders at all, then I'm screwed. Like I gotta
Yeah.
back it
Right.
up. Yeah. So
It also depends, like, if there's any, like, if it's a British,
oh yeah, if it's British,
it's one
no, I gotta do
1.2.
like
Yeah.
two. But no, I think it also helps to have headphones on, because if it's
Yeah.
just playing out in the air, I can't. I have
Yes.
to have it
No,
like a
yeah.
headphone.
Yep.
And Adam got me these really nice, like, soft ones a couple years ago, like a
Mhm.
Sony one or whatever, and they just kind of noise cancel everything else. And I feel like that really, and I
Yeah.
do try to like lock in, like I'll color or I'll play a game or something where I can just kind of like let everything come in versus, like I said, I can do the laundry and stuff too, and go outside and
Yeah.
walk, but it's,
Something that doesn't require like mental actual
yes,
thought.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like so frustrating to my family because that's the only thing when I'm doing chores or I'm busting around the house or driving or whatever, I'm listening to an audiobook. So they'll just come right up and start talking to me and I'll be like, "1 moment, please." And I have to like,
Oh, can't you see I'm doing no. So it started listening to the audiobooks because I would travel a lot for work. And the reason Adam calls it the cocaine speed is the one time I was meeting my boss up at like a location that they were staying overnight, and we were going to dinner, and I was like, I'll drive you, get in my car. And your book just starts. And it was on like 3, and he's like, I have never done enough cocaine in my life to be able to understand what this is saying.
Love
yeah,
that.
And
it
he's
does
like,
sound crazy.
you really can hear this. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah. He's like, I don't know. I know a lot of people can't even like read an audiobook, but I do agree with you. Like, I love the immersive reading, because I'm like, okay, I really can read that fast and go, but it does feel really nice to have the immersive. Like, it
And
just is its own thing.
it harkens back to like the beginning of storytelling, where it's like you love getting a story
See,
told to
and
you,
that's why
like
I
the
love
oral tradition of
yes.
it. And these narrators, they're brilliant
Oh my God,
actors.
yeah.
They're so
That's what I
good.
was gonna say. Is like, look, if you want to sit in the room with me and have a reading day and see how fast I can read, because I can throw it down. Like,
Yeah.
it's not even like that.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm quote unquote, like some people are like, oh, you're cheating listening to an
Yeah.
audiobook. It's not that. It's that it's theater of the mind. These
Mhm.
actors are brilliant, and
They're
like,
better at it than me.
and I
I'm like,
love the storytelling. Like, I love that. Who doesn't want to go sit on the carpet in front of their,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Or as you go to bed, like, speaking of hobbits, that was the first book I ever remember my dad reading to me.
The original Hobbit. Yeah.
Yes. Love the adventures for that. And it's just like you look forward to it. So I don't know. To me, I feel like it is a wonderful disconnect from a lot of the horror realities.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
But
do
those
love like
interruptions. when you're listening. I totally hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love listening to the British accents for sure. Any narrator with an accent, I tend to gravitate toward, and I love when a book takes place in a specific, time period, or like the historical ones are great, or like they'll get a narrator for an indigenous author, and
Right.
the narrator is also, indigenous and from the same kind of area, and they pronounce everything perfectly, all the names, all the places, so I
Right.
love that. Um,
Right. You
I
know which
also
book when you say
like
that, Sadie, that I was thinking of is the one that with Stephen Graham Jones,
The Buffalo Hunter
Buffalo
Hunter.
Hunter, the
yeah.
narrator for that. I mean, there's no way I could have done those things any justice, and that was such a good example, I thought, of someone that just did it well.
Yeah, I would agree. I would listen to all of Stephen Graham Jones and Sylvia Moreno Garcia, also Isabel Cañas,
Uh-huh.
also A.G. Slatter. So I do have like a handful of authors. Ooh, also Elizabeth McNeil. I love Elizabeth McNeil books on audio. She did The Dollhouse Factory and The Burial Plot,
Mm,
and she is a British storyteller who does gothic thriller. And her narrator is the same one for both, I believe. And it's just so beautiful. She has the most beautiful, luscious voice. Like, and I just never want to leave. In completing a story and having the retention of everything that happened, like I can clearly remember details that happened in books from listening to them versus like me
yeah.
reading them, if that makes
Yep.
sense.
Yes, absolutely it does. I feel like the story gets lodged in my spirit in a different way for each version of like how I'm reading.
Oh, I like that.
It just does. Thank you. So I want to ask a couple questions. One, I'll just throw them all out here because I'll forget them if I don't say it. One, we used to ask if you were someone who was new to horror, like who's your first couple books or authors you'd recommend. Two, um, what are some books that you've read that aren't labeled horror that you think should be? And three would be like, are you open to any recommendations for the rest of your spooky list for the last 6 weeks of this, or are you like, nope, it's already locked in?
I will say that yes, it is already locked.
Okay, fair. Then in that case, I'll switch the question to say, what are some of those that you're going to
Yeah.
be specifically locked in that you're really looking forward to?
Yeah, I tried to read a lot of folk horror during the summer, and what ended up happening is my folk horror summer was derailed by trying to catch up on everything that was kind of coming out during the summer, so that I could write these articles that I was busy doing for the lineup, where I was just trying to get through as many 2025 titles as possible, just to have like some sort of thumb or control on the pulse of what was happening in horror this year, because it was, for me personally, like 2023 through 2025 has been an amazing time period for horror. So my folk horror was a little bit derailed. So I have three back catalog books that I want to get to so bad. One of them's called The Wilding. I don't remember who the author is, but it's a British author, so I got most of these from the UK. That's called The Wilding. It's about kids going camping and there's some folk horror going on. Greater Sins is another one, which is a bog body book.
Mm,
So it's a small village. It seems really quiet. I love a quiet, slow burn book starting in the fall.
Yeah.
So that's on my list. Another one is called Under History, and that's also a gothic thriller horror about a woman who has like a special haunted house that she can control, and she does like tours of her haunted house, and then she can
Amazing.
unleash darkness on them whenever she wants to.
Wow.
that's awesome.
It's like a
Yeah, and the book cover is so gothic. I'll make sure to
all
take
I
a
can think of
photo.
is like Evil in Encanto. Like that sounds amazing.
No, I
Yeah.
was thinking like a reverse September house where it's
Yeah.
just like, okay, now we're friends.
Yeah.
Now
House,
I'm going to kill you with my house.
evil and Pluto. I
Yeah,
love
I
it.
love that.
I'm definitely kicking off the spooky season with I just bought the audiobook for The House of Whispers, which is an older back catalog title for Laura Purcell.
Yeah.
I always have to kick off gothic horror with Laura Purcell.
Yes.
So she did The Silent Companions, and she
She has
did
an
one called The
excellent essay in your book.
Corset that I read. She's the queen.
Yes.
But I'll do a big picture. I'll do a big roundup of like my TBR for the
Thank
next
you.
couple of months.
Yeah, I need to see it. Okay. So if someone's new to horror, what is a book or an author, 2 or 3 that you would be like, start here?
My favorite go-to recommendation for somebody who is just dipping their toe in horror is Grady Hendrix.
Mm.
I feel like he can appease a lot of different tastes. I love that he sprinkles a little bit of humor. I love that a lot of his tales have like coming of age involved or
Like,
a very specific time period. Like my best friend's exorcism takes place during the 80s. And it's fun and it feels like a movie. There's times where you're laughing, there's times where you're scared. Yeah, or like I really like to recommend the
yes.
Southern Guidebook, the Southern Vampires. What is it?
Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires.
Listen, Sadie, I screw it up.
I've never hit it right as the first
No,
time.
never. Adam makes fun of me, but I don't, no matter how many times I can't, but that is my go-to book.
To recommend, yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
for
it's so appealing
horror.
to like everybody.
And then it's also Cackle for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rachel Harrison books are great. Like kind of gateway drug books.
They are.
Yeah,
Well,
for
she's like,
sure.
speaking of like the evolution though, from like someone reading Cackle to then
Play
reading
Nice.
So Thirsty
And Play
to
Nice,
then
yeah.
Play Nice, it's like she's just, and I'm so proud of her for all those things that like
Mhm.
she's doing and saying, but like I feel like Cackle is just such women's empowerment, like and all that kind of stuff. But it's so like when we talk about like a cozy read and the
Mhm.
farmers markets and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. And there's just kind of like layers and nuance. So I feel like you don't want to start people off at the deep end of the pool, like if you just throw them off into something where there's, cannibalism horror and it's just very gruesome and brutal, like, no
I
one's
wanted
gonna
to say, I know you love Anya Allborn, but Brother's not a good beginning book.
no.
Oh
That's not a
God.
gateway drug. That's a great way to get somebody to be like, "Oh, I'm not a horror fan because this was a terrible time for me."
It's a great way to have someone not be your friend anymore. Be like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Exactly. I also like to ask them like, what kind of books are you reading?
Yeah.
So I ran into a woman at the library who said, "I don't read horror and I never will." And I said, "That's interesting. What do you like to read?" And she said, "Well, I really like historical fiction and I like, learning about things. So I read a lot of nonfiction." And I said, "Did you know there's a horror book by Amakatsu called The Hunger? And it follows the
Perfect.
Donner Party with like a supernatural element." And she was like, "What?"
Yes. She's another one. You're 100% right that
Yeah.
I would. I got to think about like all the ones I've recommended for my mom
Yeah.
and like who's like 74. And I
Mhm.
already told her about Alma's books, like The
Yeah.
Deep, The Hunger,
The
The
Fervors.
Fervor. Yeah. I mean, you're
Yeah.
right. That's such a perfect example.
Yeah, you can build a bridge to horror from anybody's specific tastes. Especially like if they're very specific. I love when they have a specific thing that they enjoy, like, if they like learning about fungus or if they, have a little specific hotspot for family drama, you just build a bridge. What's your favorite show? And they'll say, "Oh, I love, murder mysteries." And then you can throw them with like, Catriona Ward for,
Mhm.
The Last House on Needless Street, something
Mhm.
like that.
I love your sales pitch. It's the perfect way to sell someone is to gain acceptance and then
Mhm.
ask the question, well, what are you reading? And
Yeah.
then did you know?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
yes.
That's really interesting that you say that,
No, it is. It's just like, it's so disarming.
Yeah.
Okay. And validating. And then you get them peaked where they basically are like, really? Okay.
Well, it's
So
like we love this genre so much and we know that,
someone else can love it.
well, it is for everyone. They just don't know it yet, for sure.
Yeah, and I try not to like, librarians have this way that they're trained to talk to
Mhm.
people who use the library called reader's advisory. So, it's just not centering yourself in the conversation. Like, I can rattle off a bunch of my favorite books, but they're not gonna appeal to somebody who doesn't like those kinds of things. So, asking them questions is the best, most effective
Mhm.
way to hook them up with the right book.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And, it's funny because, when I read I'm gonna seg you into Feral and Hysterical specifically, like, people talk all the time about being a mood reader, and I was like, that's not quite the word that I feel like I am. I feel like it's more like, okay, maybe it's seasonal, maybe it's these different things. It's like I always like certain things, but like there's certain, and then you like in your book at the very beginning, your whole vibes reading. And I was like, she figured it out and put a word to it and like made it so I was like, this is like the feel and the thing that I was like feeling and thought. And so like how did that sort of evolve and come about where you're like, this is the type of reader that I am, and I think a lot of other people are too.
Yeah, I think when that came about, when I defined it for myself, was when I kept seeing people make posts about reading slumps, like
Mm,
being in a reading slump. And I thought, I have never in my life been in a reading slump. Like, there's been times where I wasn't able to read as much because we had young kids or, I was working a lot and I was tired. But I've never been in a slump where I didn't feel like reading. And I think it's because when I was really drilling down, was I'm not a mood reader in the sense that I'll just pick up any whim or fancy and try to get into it. I feel like if I were to try to do that, I would be unsuccessful in like DNFing books because they don't suit the mood. And then you can land yourself in a pretty heavy funk, I feel, if you just come off the high of reading something you really loved and then you jump into a completely different subgenre, like, that could be a real mood killer.
yeah.
So, I think vibes is kind of having a conversation with yourself and then picking books that repeat that vibe. Like, for an example, after watching Sinners in the theater, I wanted more of that. So, I made a list on Instagram of books that I feel kind of vibe with Sinners, and it did so well because people were also wanting that
Mhm.
vibe. They were like, "Yeah, I wanna ride that wave longer."
Yeah, I guess that's what I thought a mood reader was, but then after I saw it defined like that,
Mhm.
I was like, yes, like that's it. It's the vibes. It's like I want to stay in this feeling.
Yeah, it's like I know what I like and that's what I'm seeking out, not this sort of at the spur of the moment whim, kind of thing. It's like it's settling into this sort of it's almost like a knowledge of self and what you want to be a part of and to consume, and that's why I love like everything about Feral and Hysterical that you're like, you know what? I'm going to read nothing but books by women, like
Yeah,
for a year you said, right? And it's like
yeah,
and the thing is like I strongly believe right now in the last couple of years you can read just books by women and aside from a very specific, authors, you're reading the best horror anyway, you know?
I agree. Yeah, I've
Amen.
only read, like, a handful of male authors this year because the women have rearranged the furniture in my brain.
Yeah.
And when I talk about women, I'm talking about, intersexually, like, it's,
Uh-huh.
also non-binary and,
Yep.
that. So I feel like they kind of reoriented my brain to gravitate toward a different lens because I was so used to reading, Stephen King and Peter Straub and Clive Barker where
Mhm.
it's a very specific lens and I had to teach myself and change the chemistry in my brain, into something that is a different kind of narrative from a different perspective.
Huh.
And so, yeah, like the whole vibes thing and the difference between mood reading, I think if you just like listen to what people are saying when they're making their posts, when they're saying that they're DNFing a lot of books, or if they don't build a TBR because they never stick to it,
Mm.
that is telling you, your body is telling you, your mind is telling you, once you finish a book that you really, really enjoyed, like that's when you need to pick up something like it. It just makes a lot more sense than jumping into, a very regimented TBR that you put together, just kind of like a stack of books that you just bought, like a haul, with no intentionality.
Yeah.
So true.
Where, and I think that social media, different things, this recency bias towards books too, where it's like if you like an author and they wrote a book that came out in 2017, it's
Yep.
okay to read it. And it's like you don't only have to read books that came out this year or last year,
Right.
and it feels like there's this, this
It's
FOMO
FOMO.
where it's like, you can't you you have to read the book that everyone else is reading, but it's like if that book's not for you, you're hurting your reading.
Yeah, and I do agree with you, the recency bias, yeah, like, I had never heard of this book called The Apparition Phase. Granted, it was a British title, so maybe it just wasn't it's extremely popular here, but I follow a reader named Sinead on Instagram, and she recommended it, and the way she was selling it to me in this video, I was like, "I have to read this now." Literally never do that, but I just went to the ebook and bought it and jumped right into it. And it was like one of the best ghost stories I've read in a really long time. And it's an older title that I just completely, went over my head. I never heard of it.
Yeah, that's
See,
awesome.
that stresses me out because the backlogs, like all these other books that are out, like I want all the
And
things. I
it
want
is a
everything.
embarrassment of riches. Like I think
It,
that September of 2025 will go down as one of the greatest months in horror book releases
Yeah.
in history. I mean, we had 1 week where like half of my top 10 might have come out, in a week or two, and it's just like insane. So like I do understand that too, and not everyone has endless amounts of time to read, and you're really picking and choosing, but I think that's why something like, this book, both of your books, but especially this book, because talking about that it curates that for you. And I would say, you're probably not going to go wrong with these. Whereas when you're just picking from what's popular right now, there's a good chance that it's going to be a lot more hit or miss.
Yeah. And I feel like maybe next year I might even do a challenge where I'm pulling books off the back catalog because,
Yeah.
every single year we're getting a dozen or more books every single Tuesday,
Yeah.
but
That's just
before
horror.
yeah, yeah, and so my 2025 bookshop list has over 200 titles, maybe even 300, and I haven't even scratched the surface of adding every single book that released this year. There's
Right.
mm,
no way anyone can even, I mean, unless you're I don't know why you would want to read just brand new titles, to be honest.
Mhm.
Like,
I love that.
Well, one thing that I did, at the beginning of the year, as I was just falling in love with these brilliant, female horror writers. And same way, I grew up, it was Stephen King, Peter Straub, Clive Barker, and then if Dean Koontz and John Saul, and like
yeah,
that was the horror section. And like Anne Rice, if you were lucky, Anne Rice and later like Poppy C. Bright and stuff. But I was like, they had to exist somewhere. So I went, on a deep dive, in used bookstores and stuff and looking at old Leisure and Dell, horror
yeah,
fiction and stuff like that. And, I found just some of these female horror writers, it's like they were there and they were kicking ass then.
yeah,
Like,
like Pat
so
Koja and Sarah Langan. Sarah Pinborough wrote a ton of horror. Kenneth Lee.
yes, I'm thinking some of the ones that Melanie Tem, if you've never read her, she's
Yeah,
amazing. Safara Giron, who's still, doing stuff now, she's so good. Elizabeth Hand, all of these authors. And I'm like, man, it's just so interesting. And I'm like, I wish people would rediscover some of these books too, because they are just as good. It's like, I think that people think something like grief horror is this new creation when, there's these books in the 80s and 90s that are just perfect examples of it that no one's even heard of.
or like splatterpunk, like people are reading these like really disturbing books, like you mentioned, Brother by Anya
Mhm.
Allborn. Well, Tanith Lee was writing like really disturbing shit, you know,
Yeah,
back in the day. And, you pick up one of her books and dive in, and it's like, it's pretty edgy. Like, I've
yeah,
hesitated to even recommend the one that I did in Feral and Hysterical, but I also thought, like, she's a pioneer, like,
right.
that's why. I added it in there, was like, let's taste and see, where horror kind of started, in the sense of like all these themes and all of these like styles that we're gravitating toward. Like, let's read some of these like back catalog books. And, Sarah Langan has like kind of some domestic thrillers and stuff coming out right now, but she had a book called The Missing, which is, gonna get a re-release here pretty soon, which will be great. But I read it, and in like this one of those mass market sized books, those
Mhm.
little
But yeah.
paperbacks. And it was so much fun, and reminded me of like a Stephen King book, and that's where she started, was these old, leisure, like you mentioned, those kinds of publishers.
Mhm.
Well, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, Adam, you should commit to a whole year of reading all back books and standing them. I really want to do the women's challenge that you said.
Yeah, no, I
Reading
have
all
some,
women's
yeah.
books. Like
Yeah.
there's no reason I shouldn't. I think that sounds amazing because I have so many books.
And when I was at Stoker, I was talking, it was Tamika Thompson and Momo Shadi and Sumiko Salson. It was the Black Women in Horror table, and I bought the book that it's 160 Black women horror authors, and I'm
Oh,
like,
cool.
that's so many books. That's so much to read that you could just read Black women in horror for
Okay,
an
like
entire year. You know what I mean?
I would
So
love to do that.
but I'm just saying it. There is so much outside of,
Yeah.
and I think that the point I'm saying that is that because you do such a good job of spotlighting that and pointing people to these books that maybe they've never heard of or wouldn't have heard of. And that's why I think that, this book, Feral and Hysterical, is so important, not just for women to read because it is really important, but, as a, straight white man, like, this is how you build empathy. This is how you don't have the thoughts and feelings that too many straight white men have. And I'm not just talking about conservative horrible. I look at Bookstagram and I look at, you know, Bookstagrammers that for all sense and purpose position themselves as allies, position themselves as, good, readers and stuff like that. And then their top 10 list might have CJ Lead on it, and all the rest are men.
Yeah, I think
Might
that's
have,
horrible.
yeah, and I'm just like, you're either not, like, you can't be reading these authors and not have them on your top 10 list. It just baffles me.
Yeah, no, yeah, anytime I see a stack of top 10 for the year and it's missing women, I'm just like, well, you didn't read any women if that's your top 10, because,
Yeah, you
Yeah,
couldn't have.
they're not shelved, behind
right,
that. They're not number
Right.
11, 12, and 13. You just didn't read any.
right.
Yep.
Well, and I wonder, like, to both of you, like, do you think it's just an unconscious, like they're not aware, or do you think it's like conditioned,
It's
or
some kind of mixture, I would think. What do you think?
I mean, so, like, I get it, because, like, when I first started reading horror, I was reading a lot of, like, Nick Cutter, and,
Mhm.
I was reading, still a lot of Stephen King, and, I was just I was ignorant of the other books that were out there. I didn't even start reading, like, translated horror until very recently, like, in the last 3, 4 years, reading translated fiction. And then also, like, it's a choice, like, you have to prioritize these books, and they're not as popular. When you post, Charco Press books with a translated title and a cover that's, not easily recognizable, it's not Grady, it's not, Rachel Harrison, it's not Stephen Graham Jones. Like, if you choose these like indie titles, these translated titles, these women from Argentina, people are just kind of like, they don't like it. And so people don't post it because it's just not,
it
they don't
doesn't give
well.
dopamine likes, basically?
Does what?
It doesn't give you the dopamine from getting the likes?
Yes,
Yeah, these
just, like,
yeah.
specifically on Bookstagram. I mean, like, if you're just reading, you're just a reader and you're not, like, making content, that doesn't matter. But, yeah, on Bookstagram, it just, like, the popular stuff is more of a conversation starter, and people will
Right.
talk to you about it. But if they don't know it, then they're just kinda, it dies?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about Isabel Allende. The House of the Spirits.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah, The
Mhm.
House of the and that was a big book. It was like, I want to say it's like 6, almost 700 pages. But I love some of these that are just like these translated books that I've read. They're so, uh, and Adam, I know that we've talked about this a lot, but the formats with foreign movies or even, like this where it being translated, the recipe is different. The storylines are different. It's a lot more complex and deep, and I prefer to read like that. And so that particular book, like The House of the Spirits, was so good. And then a book that I was going to say that hasn't been, it's also Spanish and translated, but it's not considered to be horror, is, yeah. See, I get it. I had to find it here, but it's about this character named Simonopio, and he's got this horrific face, and he's like kind of the keeper of all the bees. He's like born that way, and like it brings in a lot of like folklore and just like racism and classism and death and sickness from Spanish War, or not, I mean the Spanish flu, and complexity, and it's not labeled as horror, but it deals with all the tropes of horror, of death, and people that hate you because you look different. He keeps saying like, "Oh, the coyote's gonna get me." Well, you keep thinking it's the coyote, but it's just really someone that's, like this child. They don't belong to be, sort of thing. So I just find that like the more you read into something different and different cultures, it brings out different when you're speaking about the angles and the lenses. I just really enjoy that.
Yeah, I think the conversation that is happening around horror is really important because, we're seeing like influencers and TikTok accounts like reading Tender is the Flesh by Agostino Bastrica. And
Uh-huh.
it really, skyrocketed that book into the stratosphere. And now it's very recognizable. And now, people are just chomping at the bit for more of her translated work. And then they start reading Mariana Enriquez, and then they start reading, gravitating toward even lesser known titles that are coming in that are translated. And it just takes a little bit of time for everybody to kind of catch up. But then once it does change the landscape of
Yeah.
horror, you know. Uh,
Well, that's
I think like YA is even doing kind of a similar thing because they address situations that sometimes trad horror is not as likely to pursue.
mm,
So they tackle big issues for teens, and
they
talk
do.
about identity and queerness and
They're doing such good work. So many of the
yeah,
people that we
great, and
spotlight
they're the
who are is
future of
crazy.
they're the future of horror. They're changing the landscape of what horror is gonna look like in 10 years, you know?
Yep, that's what.
Tanya,
Yes,
yeah, it was Tanya Pell at Spooktastic was
fantastic.
talking about, when they were saying what's the future of horror, and they were like, well, read middle grade and we
I'll
read
tell you.
YA because that's what's going to
Yep,
be,
yep.
though it's going to grow up with those readers, and that's what's going to become, adult horror. So yeah, no, that's really cool.
So just to give you the title name, it was The Murmur of Bees by Sofia Segovia, and it is a Mexican historical and horror based.
Yeah,
So I never
Okay,
said the name
wonderful.
yeah.
because I could not think of it, but I feel like I love watching like someone like Tiffany Conlibros where she spotlight,
Mm.
a lot of these different books, or it's like, oh, I didn't even realize it was, Women in Translation Month or
Hmm.
something like that you put up, Sadie. It's like I'm all about wanting to be educated and learning on that of like, okay, I'm reading it, but I didn't even realize I was doing it, and
Yeah.
so I really love that word that you selected of saying I was ignorant
Hmm.
because,
Yeah.
that word means not knowing,
Yeah.
right? And it's like if you don't know, then how can you change? But I don't feel like I'm posting things for the likes, but every time I bring up a book that I feel like is less popular or less whatever, it's just I guess it's frustrating because I want there to be so much love and engagement and it's fun to talk about. But when it's lesser heard of, you
Hmm.
don't get the conversation to go as much.
Which
And
is, yeah,
so
sad.
it is sad. So I feel like it's like I kind of pulled back from sharing some of these other things or like, hey, if you really like this kind of horror thing, you should read this. But like,
Yeah.
I don't talk about those things anymore. Kind of just stuck in the lane. And
But I do think
after
that,
this conversation, I think I'm going
yeah.
to try to
Well,
do a
I
better
think,
job.
when it comes to those posters that are, when they post their top 10 and they haven't read some of these things, I think, it goes to the lack of curiosity maybe, and the sort of ego of like, the way to become knowledgeable is, you have to recognize that you don't know something at first. And I think that someone that maybe has read, for many years and read horror for many years, they don't want to, I don't know if I want to say, don't want to admit the fact that they have a blind spot in their reading and need to, search it out, find people that are reading it, learn from someone else, and sometimes they're, reticent to do that because it shows that they were ignorant and they don't want to recognize that.
Yeah, definitely. I think there is that sometimes that attitude, but I also think that Bookstagram can be a really unsafe place to
Mm,
learn and grow.
Yeah.
Um,
good point.
you can
That's a really
post
good point.
Yeah, you can post something and then you get people comment and just be really condescending or rude about, something that you were ignorant about. And so it's not a gentle place oftentimes.
Mhm.
And so I think we can do better as a community of being more gracious and, maybe DMing somebody instead of just, commenting and being obnoxious, like just DMing
Mm,
them and letting them know, like, hey, did you know that author actually is from this place and not that place? Or did you know that, all of your books are by men and I have like 5 recommendations you might want to check out, or just some, started.
right.
I also think like there's a little trick to platforming a book that's not very popular.
Mm.
So I like to sneak it in on a list with other books that people recognize. So
That's a great idea.
I'll do like a post about Sporer, like spore
Yeah.
mushroom horror. And you've got Mexican Gothic and you've got, you know, some
What
other
moves
like,
dead?
yeah, exactly. Some other bigger titles. And then I'll put Green Fuse Burning and I'll put You Will Speak for the Dead and I'll put, just these lesser known indie
The
titles.
Botanical Daughter.
Yeah, and then it blows up, and those indie titles are getting picked up or what or looked at least, or added to somebody's bookshelf on Goodreads.
And
Just
that's what
Yeah,
I'll do. That's what I'll do. See, I've learned so much
yeah.
already. Like,
I have to say, You Will Speak for the Dead is one of the best body horror books that
yes.
there are scenes in that book that just live in my head so much. Like, for such a
So,
little book,
ro
it packs the most disgusting punch. I absolutely love that one.
I agree with you. R.A. Busby, if you wanna go back and read some of R.A. Busby's, like, lesser known titles, I
Huh?
recommended one in, Feral and Hysterical called
Yes.
Bits, and it's about I won't even tell you what it's about because it's a tiny little book, so it'll blow it away, but it's called Bits, but you have to check it out. Tiny,
I
it's like
definitely will.
99 cents on
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Yes, absolutely. Well, I have to say, it's a big year for nonfiction and horror, but if I were voting, you'd be getting a second Stoker come June because
absolutely.
Feral and Hysterical
Absolutely.
is just fantastic and should be on any horror person lover's shelf for sure. I think,
Thank
you
you.
outdid yourself.
I will tell you, every store I've gone into, your book is out,
That is
though.
true. You
I
are in
will
there,
say
you're
that.
Aw,
everywhere.
thank
It
you.
is. Even the most independent stores I've
And
seen.
biggest, like in
That
farm,
too.
yeah.
Yes.
So it's
That makes
everywhere
me
as
feel
it should
so
be.
good, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So
I really like, I think about how they have like all the beautiful like trinkets and
yeah,
things
you're
to
on
buy around
our,
it. Like,
our local Barnes and Noble. You're on the end cap for all their
yeah.
big horror
And then when we
titles.
were up
So
at Midtown Scholar, like she
yep,
was showcasing, like, I am happy to really see that. Like,
yeah.
it makes me feel like, okay, good.
And it makes me so happy, not just for you, but for all those authors that are in
Yes.
there, and you know, people that I'm friends with, Chloe Spencer and Haley Newland. I'm like calling the, sending them messages. You're in Feral and Hysterical, and they're so excited that they're in there.
They were.
So it's just wonderful. You're doing such great things for this community, and we just love
Thank
and
you.
are so
Thank you.
thankful for it. And so Feral and Hysterical is out now. Nightworms is an amazing monthly subscription service or that you can get and always has amazing books and cool little things too.
The library at Hellebore, the
No, no,
Nightworms.
no, that wasn't.
Which
No,
one was it?
it was no. Well, what is it? This the Unborn and but yeah, no.
For September?
For September, well, I got the one that had Feral and Hysterical and the Unborn in it, and then
Well,
you
The
said,
Unseen by
yeah.
Anya Allborn.
Oh yes, 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 yes. And then
Yes, which is like one of her creepiest books, I think.
yes, no, so good. And I love her introduction for your book too, which is so fantastic
I
that,
She's
kind of tied those
really
together.
outdid herself. That was so sweet.
I love how you have the tea and all the cool things in there. It's an event anytime that box comes for sure.
Well, I appreciate you guys so much.
Yes.
I appreciate that you're doing this podcast and like getting the word out there even more than you already do, and all the like books that you read and platform, and just like your friendly, warm, welcoming attitude to new readers. Like, you guys are doing a good thing here.
Well, thank you.
Thank
And
you. I feel like we often joke saying it's a horror therapy hour, but
yeah.
I feel really heard, and like I've learned some tips on I feel like I can access my books better now from what
Mhm.
you shared. I can sharing and having a community aspect is so important to me, but now I know how to slip these recommendations
Yeah, I love
in,
that.
and
Yay,
just I
good.
feel like really empowered, and that feels really good. I always love like when we're done talking to someone and the things that I take away, but this is I think the type of conversation that with learning from someone like you of like it will have trickle out effects.
Good. Yeah, I can't wait to see you slip some of those like lesser known titles into a big lit.
Oh yeah. Be on the lookout. Well, thank you very much. This was as wonderful as I expected, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and, can't wait to see all your gothic recommendations coming up.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'll see you in the Bookstagram space.
All right.
All right,
See ya.
bye-bye.
Bye bye.